Okay, so my talk is going to be about open source access to FileMan or open source FileMan Vista SQL Access. I work for YadaDB, which you heard in the intros. So what I kind of did is I took a step back and say, what are some approaches to being able to solve the SQL data access? SQL data access to FileMan data is commonly requested. It's something that I've had to do with some of my previous work of being able to get SQL access to that, because there's a lot of really cool SQL tools to be able to do projections, graphing, lots of cool things that doesn't have to kind of embody a programmer or teach them M or teach them FileMan, that you can hire someone basically off the street that knows how to use some of these SQL tools, and they can create whatever it is that you kind of want from there. So some of the ideas being able to take advantage of that fact while trying to relieve some of the stress on your developers that already know Vista and FileMan. So there were three approaches that kind of popped immediately into my brain. One is BMXNet. I'll explain that. I'll explain all these in a moment. The other one is another project called FM Projection. This came from a company named MedSphere. They do have this released as open source software. The other one is a project named PIP. PIP was released by FIS in 2008, I think, somewhere around that time frame. And so I'm just going to kind of buzz through these real quick. So BMXNet, it's written as an ADO.NET component that's usable in basically any .NET project. This is basically cross-platform using .NET Core or Mono. I have personally used BMXNet on Mono on Linux before. It does work. So you can have a fully open source stack behind it. It allows read-only access to many files. There's a lot of caveats behind all of this. If you want to know more, I'm sure I can tell you more. But basically, one of the limitations of using BMXNet is that you're using programmatic or custom program access only. You have to write a program that uses this component. It's a DLL that then can present whatever you want. So if you've got a C#, VB.NET developer, or any .NET language, you can basically drag this component in, access it using ADO.NET, and off you go to the races, and you can kind of basically write SQL statements using that. The other one is FM Projection. Like I said, this came from MedSphere. This is designed as a storage plugin to MySQL. So MySQL allows various storage engines, is what they call them, to be able to access data. One of the most common ones people know of is something called NODB. There's ISAM, and several others that all plug into that. So basically what you're using is the MySQL core that knows how to do all the query processing, all of that stuff, all of the core, and you also use that for JDBC or ODBC access. And all you're replacing is saying, well, when I need to store or get data, where do I talk? That's the kind of idea behind a storage plugin. This code base is rather old. I spent quite a bit of time trying to get it to work on MariaDB or some of the modern MySQL code bases. Doesn't really compile at this point. So you're basically stuck on an old version of MySQL at this point, which is not really beneficial at this point. I've heard off and on some reports of slow performance because of how it brokers stuff across the wire.
We can attest that Christopher knows how to compile stuff.
Yeah, you can ask about that later. Yes, I do know how to compile C applications and spend quite a bit of time working on that type of stuff. So the last one I want to talk a little bit about is PIP. Basically, this is from what I understand, the basis of the profile banking system from Fidelity. It was released in 2008 with some beta packaging. It's kind of, but it contains all of what you need to run for PIP. Basically, from, again, kind of reading through most of it, is that it's a battle-tested SQL support, basically due to some of its heritage with profile banking. So kind of, if you replace like Vista and FileMan with all this stuff, a lot of these advantages kind of work out being the same, just replace the words. Like FileMan's battle-tested because we've been using it for so long, that kind of thing. So it's one of those that it's a lot of those same things kind of apply to PIP. It also includes the profile scripting language, which is called PSL, which is an object-oriented mumps language, so to speak. And basically, it's a database management system that's referred to as data quick. So PIP is kind of all the applications, and then kind of like Vista is the whole thing. And then when you get down to it, like their FileMan is called data quick from everything I've been able to surmise. I'm sure there are people in the audience that will tell me I got this wrong if I got any of it wrong. So that's kind of what I've looked for. So basically, my initial plan of action, I kind of did some research on some of these. I kind of knew BMXNet. I played around with the FM projection from MedSphere, and then I started doing some playing around with pip, which showed some early successes. So basically, what I've kind of focused on is being able to get pip to a prototype rather quickly. And like I said, I experimented with other approaches. Cool thing about pip is that's completely open source. It's got good SQL support. It is mostly mumps. There are C call-ins and call-out programs. I don't know a lot about them. I just know they exist and I have them working and they compile. I can compile them. I learned a lot more what the C call-in and call-out applications do. Again, the pip is a rather large, like it's just like when you're trying to tackle Vista, where there's various packages all along the way that some of it, like you start making more sense and more sense kind of goes on. So it's got some really good data mapping tools. And the cool thing is that it's a generic framework. So part of this, I'm looking at this thinking beyond just Vista Font and FileMan for using stuff like pip. So I'm going to show you a little bit of a demo. So this is where it will somewhat get exciting if things go wrong. So what I have here is I have a machine that already's got pip and stuff loaded. So I just, actually that's not the one I want. So this is basically what you log into when you get into pip. This is just kind of an overview kind of showing you pip kind of as it stands. So here I can go ahead and log in. So this is kind of what you drops into. A lot of people in the room is kind of looking at this going, this looks oddly familiar because this looks a lot like Vista FileMan and what type of what we're used to working with inside of our terminal emulators. So here we can go ahead and go into file definition. Obviously, if you're reading along, you can see there's lots of really kind of cool things here that also kind of closely match to what we do in FileMan. So again, a lot of this shouldn't be a gigantic leap for us as a community. So here I can create a file definition. So if I can type today, so I'm going to create a file name test. I can give a description. File. I'm just filling out some of the required things as I go along. I can't remember what this one is. Entity file. Yes, that's what I want. Oh, I don't have a global name.
It's not required, but if you don't have it, you can't go into it.
Right. And so I can tell what my primary keys are in the subscripts. There's lots of different things I can do around in here. I'm just typing an IEN just to give something that we know here. And then 94 is my delimiter. And I can do other various things here. And if I go down, and then there's that has to do with some of the data formats that are behind the scenes. And so now I can go ahead and file it. I can't remember what's at the bottom of the screen because my terminal's so big now, but I don't think any of it's necessary because it let me do it anyway. And so now I can start adding in data items here. So I can give it a name, which I can't use because it's a SQL reserved word. I can tell it's a data type of text. It's got a length of 40. There's no decimals. Page. Sure. There's a better way to do it, but question mark works. And I don't remember if I have my terminal mapping set up for that key. I do a lot of this development on my Linux machine, not my Mac, but I needed to do certain things on my Mac this weekend, so I'm doing it all from my Mac. So it's one of those if I can't remember my terminal emulation off the top of my head.
So if they don't have a concept of a computed field?
They do. You actually have to do that somewhere else. It's not a data type in that regard, the data type is more defining what's going to come back on the SQL side, not what's going to happen as it actually gets the data. So it's going to ask me some questions about the data location, and I'm going to have to change this because there's going to be fields I need to see that I can't currently see. Okay, there we go. Wow, you redrew very interestingly. No. So I'm just going to go ahead and modify it now, and I should be able to see everything I need to see now. So text, we want 40. So give it a column heading. So here's some of the like pattern checks, default value, minimum values, maximum values. So the pre and post processors are here. I can say if it's required, valid for extraction, which has to do with internationalization, and a couple other things. And so there's a next page that will say, what's the subrecord ID? So this is somewhat building up the subscripts that are behind it. So in like FileMan's case, that will have, a lot of times we'll have a prefix. So like if you talk about the patient, the new person file, it's 200, comma, then the IEN, and then comma like 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what that's kind of mapping out to. So I'm just going to put in 1, and then we'll say the column. This is basically the piece number that will be inside the string because I told its delimiter is 94, which is the caret. If you don't know your ASCII to character things here. And so you asked about computed expressions, Mr. Witten. It's here. There is a field that actually deals with all that. And so if you actually see down here, you see it says KBBO IEN, 1. So that's where it's actually going to grab the data from. So if I actually complete this mapping, that's where it's going to go look. So we can kind of go through there, and then we can file it, we can continue, and that's done. And you can basically rinse and repeat this as you're creating files. You can also do this via SQL queries in case you want to do it all that way. There's multiple ways in how you can do it. I just kind of want to show you what's possible and kind of show you a little bit of what's here. So next thing I want to show you is how this looks from a SQL point of view. So here, I will see if I'll try as hard as I can to make sure that this is readable. Since this is a more GUI application, I don't have a lot more controls here. So as some fun, I have a canned query here that I want to go ahead and run. And it's Control Enter. So here, and I realize this is hard to see, but that SQL statement says select star from new person. I assume everyone in this room knows what new person is, right? And so what you see down here at the bottom is columns named IEN, access code, ADU, PN, allowed to use spooler, and so on and so forth. And there's a gigantic scroll bar down here at the bottom. And so if I can kind of keep scrolling, you see a lot of data here, right? So, so this is indeed, and some might see some of these, like this column here, kind of looks like a FileMan date and time. Or actually, no, the other one. Yeah, that's the odd dollar horror log. I was referring to, I wanted to say DEA, but I put my finger on the wrong spot. That's where my cursor was headed that way, but my fingers were not. Yeah, it doesn't always work in my brain. So this is indeed Vista data mapped to SQL and accessible via this GUI tool.
Does the tool allow you to execute code that shifts and conversions of data? Since clearly most people don't understand.
Right. Yeah, I haven't gotten that far yet. There's ways I can do some of that to be able to do date time conversions within that. So that's some of the stuff you're jumping ahead of my presentation.
You know, a lot of that stuff I end up doing in the other thing, like bring it into Excel, and then you do the formulas
Yeah.
The reminders package doesn't always do a conversion.
Right, so I convert all that stuff out there. Distracted.
So yeah, that's a new person file. And so that's a new person file. Let's hit something else. So this is the patient file. Go pick some big files, right? Go big or go home. So again, more FileMan dates and times, more stuff kind of mapped across, and yet even more fields that are mapped. So again,
So is performance always this good?
so far, I do have limiters in the SQL part of it because I'm selecting star, which is not normal for SQL stuff. It's what I'm doing for demos, and so you can actually see I'm limited to 100 rows here. So I mean it's still rather performant.
Can you get us 1,000 rows and see how it happens?
There we go. 1,000 rows. There you go. All this is actually running 100% without indexes right now. So all I've done is just raw mapping of stuff, saying it's over there. Can you make it present as SQL? Great, and move on.
Is this Squirrel SQL one of the tools of Linux, or is this one of the tools that our gentleman helped provide?
So Squirrel SQL is a completely open source SQL tool. So part of this is that I want, because my talk is all about open source SQL access, I wanted to make sure I use an open source tool. A lot of people might be familiar with DB Visualizer or a whole bunch of these other tools. I didn't want to use them because they're not open source. So completely open source, you can go read the source code for Squirrel SQL, and it does what I need to do. And it also proves that like the JDBC connection can be used just about anywhere without really regard to any tool that you're using. So with that, I'm going to jump back to my presentation. I'll have plenty of time for questions. So the question on your brain is probably, where do I get this thing? So the source code is neat, open source. It's available on GitHub. It's available at yadb/pip. I have actually created a Docker container for the easy development and testing and getting started. Most of this because I need it myself. Again, I'm running on a Mac, and unless you know what my other side project is, you know YadaDB does not work on a Mac, or not yet. Watch, there might be something going on here. So there is a Docker container, and so that's what you've seen as you go along. All this is actually running on a Docker container on my Mac. So the performance you're seeing is actually going through emulation layers as well, just so it works inside of my Mac. So again, kind of worst case performance. And so I pushed this up to Docker Hub that has Vista and pip basically integrated together. There's the link to where you get it. So I have one more thing. So there's an automated Vista mapping tool that I've been working on. So manual mapping is slow. It's prone to errors. As someone who sat and mapped probably 10 to 15 fields, I was like, after that, I was like, this is not going to happen for very long. Considering a lot of these files have got hundreds or thousands of fields, there's no way that you're going to do this and do this manually for any length of time. Basically, after day one of, hey, look, it works, I instantly started writing this tool because I knew there was no way. So the cool thing about automated mapping is that it's fast and can be error checked. And so if you know me, you know that I like unit testing. So there's automated tests written. So there's automated tests written that you can do all of this work and actually go back and fact check to make sure the SQL projection actually matches what FileMan actually gives you as well. So currently, again, a lot of this is like proof of concept. Where can we go? What can this tool do? Where can we go? I don't have support for subfiles or word processing fields right now. It was one of those of try and find some of the low-hanging fruit, prove the point. I think the point's been proven that it does work. I do inside, so yet. The source code is open source, and it's also available on GitHub. M. M. Well, at least my mapping tool is all written in M.
So the subfiles in word processing field that aren't supported yet is the automatic.
Yeah,
mapping tool,
yeah.
not the pip stuff.
Yeah, it's just telling pip what to do. So I haven't told pip what to do with them yet.
When you did your automatic mapping, are you using SQLI or using something?
So I know that this is going to be part of it. So now I'm into the questions and comments phase of this. I do want to show you. I want to show you this tool real quick. And yes, I know I'm taking my life into my hands at this point. DM. So someone give me a file. Easy. Easy. Do not give me the lab or pharmacy file.
3.5 is nice too.
So 3.1,
No, 3.1 is the title.
it's the title file, right? And so here you can kind of see I have some debugging information that kind of comes out. So the table name is title. It gives me some of the keys, and I have some debugging information for me so I know what the keys kind of look like. As it moves along, this is part of my support for subfiles. So let's see if it actually worked. And we're going to.
When you use something that's a keyword in SQL, you put it in single quotes.
I think this works because I've done it. I think I've done this before. There you go. So I also heard 3.5, and so just because I am a glutton for punishment.
3.5. Now he's taking his luck.
So that's the device file.
Maybe you'll make an index on it.
So let's run the device file. There you go.
Very good.
So as you can see, the tool does work. And I should have actually kind of showed you behind the scenes just to show you that none of these files were mapped ahead of time. These were not plants. But I also don't, I think you all trust me.
Hold on, Christopher. We need to fact check.
Okay.
Did you map 3.2?
Okay. You have to give me the name.
That's the terminal type file.
Oh.
So this should map. I think it's going to put an underscore inside of it. So terminal type. Okay, so that's the error message. It doesn't have a clue what that is. Okay. And so let's get back to the right one. So you want 3.2 terminal type. Okay. Well, if we go back to the right thing and we hit execute again, congratulations. So I don't pull any punches. I do like my live demos as much as I take my life in my hands.
Go back over to the device file. Does it have knowledge about the fact that there's a pointer to the terminal type file?
No. This is a very straightforward conversion right now. This is go look in this global location. Is there data here? Yes, put it here. It's very mechanical, not inferring anything. And even then, from a SQL point of view, even though that's a pointer, the most I can do is tell it that there's a relationship there, and then you're going to have to do the join to be able to go get the data, because that's how most of the time it works in SQL. At least that's how it's always working whenever I write SQL. That if I need to know that, I just say join, go get me that column from over there. Okay, great. So that's kind of how it works behind the scenes. And because I BBO SQLT.
As an aside, folks, Chris is showing the BBO.
Yeah.
His personal namespace. We do have access to personal namespaces if anybody else as a coder wants one that doesn't currently have one.
Right. So, and because I'm somewhat, I'll give just 1 second. And because I'm somewhat proud of this, I'm showing off the tests. And so I have 2 tests written for both the patient and the person file. All these dots show you how many tests it completed. You can see I do have 1 failure. And part of this is I have to figure out how to deal with this. But there's a claim folder location. That name is used twice. One has a star in it, the other one does not. And so what happens is that that's legal and file. It's something within how the code is. When I ask SQLi to give me some of these names, it's not maintaining some of the information I need to know that that name was already used, which is why that actually fails. But one failure out of how many dots do you see? And so it's one of those of like, I know what's wrong, I just have to figure out a creative solution to it. But again, tests are written, they do pass mostly. The person file is 100% ready to go. So, huh? Yes. So over here, I know I put you on hold for a second, so go ahead.
So, non-technical question.
Yeah.
In terms of your development process, how far away from having to have SQL programmers to ask questions there, for instance, by patient, how many, by patient, outpatient pharmacy, order was written,
So I do have quite a bit of work in front of me. So what I don't have support for right now is data types. I don't have support for subfiles, which is going to be major for what you're talking about. Subfiles is basically my next target to figure out.
I think the query she wants to run can be run today.
Okay.
You just have to know the FileMan data format.
Yeah.
That you could do actually. I presume there's a group by and whatnot.
Yeah. You're only seeing simple SQL statements because I'm trying to show you a lot of data, but the SQL engine is rather robust within it. I've read a lot of code. There's a lot of keywords that it knows how to deal with already in it that I don't have to worry about. All I have to worry about is the mapping. But the SQL engine appears to be very, very complete as to all the various commands that you can send it and have it process. So I don't have a worry if that is indeed 100% possible. It's just depending upon where all the data is right now, knowing some of the issues I have with some of my beta mappings. Again, most of this is automated, so I'm just asking FileMan going, can you give me a list of fields here? Great. Go get me the field names, go perform the mapping. So I'm like, most of this is kind of in hand. So subfiles is my next target. The other thing is controlling some of the data returns for it. So I'm not, there's a loop that has to run to be able to get all the data that you see presented to the screen. So some of that's not working exactly the way I intend it to. I have some information on how I think I can fix that now. And then I want to fix data types. And then I'll start looking into relationships to try and make it a little easier for your joins, but that's more extra credit on my behalf. And then fixing, like, with data types, I also mean like fixing the FileMan date and time so it shows up correctly inside of SQL. Yes, I do know that there's a web page on Hard Hats that describes the issues of mapping FileMan dates and times to SQL. Very aware of it. I read that more times than I can count at this point because there is a midnight issue that has to be resolved. I haven't figured that out yet and exactly how I'm going to deal with that yet. I just know, I know that page very well. I just haven't had the amount of brain power to apply to that problem yet because I've had other things I want to apply the brain power to. So that's kind of the future roadmap of what some of the quick things I'm planning on doing. I plan on also making the test framework a little bit more generic. So then when you actually run the mapping, it will automatically run the test right as you do the mapping and being able to say, yes, the SQL query, like selecting everything, the SQL query returns everything it's supposed to do when the mapping is complete. So I want to make it a little bit more user-friendly there. George, you had a question maybe? Okay. Okay, I thought I put you on hold for a second while I answered my first question. So
I've got a question.
Yeah.
So we're sitting at our hospital and we want to use this product and we want our SQL people to be able to mine our data.
Mhm.
So the first step, is there a way to like use some sort of script to just basically map all of this stuff right now, or do we have to like put in file by file?
So I want to provide the tool that will just say go map it all. In development, I don't want to sit and wait for everything to map.
No,
So,
but
yeah,
we
it's
tried to
no.
write a script like that, and then
No.
once that was written, next step, I guess, you're going to need joins and this and that.
Yeah.
You need to know the relationship between the file.
Yeah.
And how would like an end user be able to figure that out without looking at a data dictionary, which they probably can't do?
So pip, from what I can read, understands relationships. So I can actually say this field maps to this other file or this other table somewhere else. And so if I can figure out how to get the FileMan relationships, which are error tools inside of SQLi that will tell me this as well, if I can figure out how to get it from FileMan into a way that I can tell pip what to do, that means that you can use it. So I have a lot of familiarity with DB Visualizer. DB Visualizer actually has got a way that you can say, can you show me all the relationships for this particular table? And so if I pull up a table, say, hey, here's all the relationships, it will do that. So I don't know about Scroll SQL. I've only recently started doing that because I really tried to find an open source tool to do it. But it's one of those, if I can figure out how all that works, then it should be possible that you don't have to hit the data dictionary. I've, in past projects where I've done stuff like this before, I can, there's going, no matter what, from a SQL programmer point of view, they're going to have to ask some questions back to your Vista programmers to be able to fully do their job, because they're not going to understand all the data that's coming back and forth. I mean, that to me, there's no way around that, but they should be able to do a large portion of their job without bothering the programmers. So I think.
Just to help answer, I want just
Okay.
add an answer. So one in New York, they've gone full size into SQL for a lot of their reports, and it was too slow. But having said that, when they had to write SQL queries, what they did is that they pulled up Vivian, they looked at the data dictionary in Vivian, and they translated that knowledge into SQL.
Yep.
That's how they did it.
Yeah, that's really good. I completely forgot about using Vivian to do that, but yeah, it works.
That's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Use Vivian to find out, okay, this is the file, and it points to this file, and so on.
Yeah. George.
That was a better idea.
Yeah. 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 So yeah. So don't mistake anything I said. I know that I can get relationship information from FileMan. From what I understand, pip 100% knows about relationships. It's trying to tell pip what the relationship is. That's the part I don't know how to do right now, right this very second. Only because I haven't gotten there yet. What you're seeing is, yeah, what you're seeing is a prototype going, hey, look, it works, and basically everyone's like, oh! So yeah, I realize there's a lot, and I really want to do a lot because I do see it's really exciting to me. I mean, I'm really happy. It doesn't do all this. I'm like, it doesn't do all this stuff because I've only worked on it for a couple weeks. Yeah. 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 Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
User level descriptions of those relationships. So there's the pip telling you what the relationships are. It's sufficient for the SQL, the person just writing the SQL with those relationships.
So part of this comes down to the SQL tool that you're using. And so I'm going to give the same disclaimer before. I know DB Visualizer fairly well. So it can give you both a visual representation of here's this table, here's where it spiders out, but it can also give you textual representations of this column in this table refers to this column in this table. So that information can come straight from the SQL tool. There's SQL words to describe this.
So in other words, once these next several steps are done, your standard SQL, your rich SQL tools have a lot of really SQL-friendly ways of describing all this relationships. It'll all be
That's the idea. David.
You mentioned JDBC.
Yep.
And I think in passing you mentioned ODBC.
Mm-hmm.
Does it also have an OLADB engine?
I think it's only has JDBC.
So pip right now only supports JDBC. There are ODBC to JDBC bridges if your application doesn't speak JDBC.
There's a lot of Microsoft tools that use OLADB.
I can't. I will have to do some research to remember what OLADB. I think. I think. Well, OLADB is actually really, really, really old. I think it's really designed for like Microsoft SQL Access, that kind of thing. It's not a commonly supported thing today. Most people will go over to OLADB is really kind of minimal. So I would make sure your tools support like ODBC or JDBC. Yeah.
Actually, on this Dr. Pete, so apparently in the profile work, at some point, some customer actually was using ODBC, JDBC bridge, but we don't know about recently because everyone recently is just using JDBC.
Yeah.
These bridges doing this.
Yeah, I know there's open source bridges to do ODBC. I've encountered them before. It's not. It's just basically we're just trying to speak a different protocol. Instead of me speaking English to you, I'm speaking Japanese. Like we know how to convert them, and especially since we have constrained word sets, we know how to do a much better conversion. So it doesn't scare me at all to say an ODBC to JDBC conversion. I think I see Sam's hand. Yeah.
Were you able to compile the Java code?
I haven't tried that yet. I know the source code is there. I've extracted it, but at this point, I'm more excited about completing my Vista mapping than compiling Java code. Can you really blame me? Yeah. Did you have a question over here? No? Okay. Any other questions? I need to see if there's things coming in on the chat. Because I know we have some remote people. I don't see anything in chat. For people, I don't know if I can get people on the phone. Possibly. So I received a message. What's in my chat window? I don't see anything there. Oh, I don't think I have audio enabled on my laptop. If anyone on the phone has got questions, feel free to type them to me because I can see them. As I do that, I just want to quickly kind of show you what's here. So this is the YaDB/pip repo. So you can see all the source code is here, along with the JDBC jar that's required. I've written an installation guide that goes through the manual installation steps from compiling everything that is in the source code repository, because there are no binaries except for the jar. There are no binaries inside of the repo, so you have to compile a lot of stuff. And I give you instructions on how to set all the stuff up. Some of the kernel parameters you have to have. Don't ask. And then some of the YaDB configuration, kind of going all the way through that. And if all that's too hard for you, there's a Docker container. And I tell you how to build it. So then if you just want pip by itself, you can build it. That's how you run the image, how you access it, how you use it, using the JDBC connection, some of the usernames and passwords. If you want to use Squirrel SQL like I do, I have instructions on how to set all that up as well. And all this is all in the documentation folder there. I know I'm running out of time because I can see my grapple coming beside me. I also got instructions of combining both Vista and pip. This is what you saw today. So the Docker container that you see here is 100% the Docker container that you saw there, except for the minor differences is I have an extra volume mount to pull in my Vista mapping utilities into the Docker container because I developed those locally and put them into the container.
Can I ask, I'm sure a really dumb question, but I'm not really a techie. So,
Yep.
You know, I know about VM and all this,
Yeah.
but I really don't know much about Docker containers. And all of a sudden, everyone's using Docker containers, and I really
Yeah.
don't know what they are.
Yeah.
What are they? Why is everyone
Think of
suddenly
it
using
VM.
them instead of VM?
They're faster to start than VMs. So think about like a VM. They're faster to start than a VM, easier to manage than a VM.
Okay. So they're a type of
Virtualization, if you want. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's an improvement over
Yeah.
VM.
It's at a very different technical level in how it's performing all those operations, but simple answer to a simple question is kind of like a VM, just faster and easier to manage.
You can put those on locally. They
Yeah.
don't have to be in the cloud.
Everything you saw here, I can disconnect from the internet and I can give you the same demo. And so I tell you how to do it all with a Docker container, which is how I suppose most of you are going to do this. But if you're the crazy person like me, I have all the manual instructions of how I basically built the whole Docker container that has both Vista and pip together. And so on and so forth. So any other questions? Yes, Sam?
This should work on Sigma, as far as you know.
As far as I know, I can't say I've tested it.
No, sure, I know.
And there's a, I can tell you you've got C call-in and call-out applications that have to compile, and so I don't know the requirements of those.
At least as far as
Oh.
call-outs, I know that they work.
Yeah. The question was, does it work on Sigwin? And the answer is, should, maybe. Okay.
But the Docker container will work on Windows.
Yeah. It works on Windows, Mac, Linux. I actually do most of my pip development on Docker, well, either Docker or natively on my Linux machine. Like I said, I need my Mac for another project that's going on this weekend.
Is the Docker container set up like your other ones so that you can actually log on to it?
Yep.
Get programmer access.
Yeah. Basically, I started from, this Vista pip Docker container is not my normal quality standard for how it's built. It's very manually done. There's no automated script that does this. I literally started up one of my normal Vista Docker containers, ran a whole bunch of stuff manually, said Docker commit, and then pushed it, which is not how you're supposed to do it. I got that. But this is development. I needed something quick, easy, so I could share and kind of work on it. So that's exactly. Yes, yeah. And in fact, the Vista instance that's running on it is Vihu, built using that exact same methodology. Again, if you have questions on how I built it, right there is exactly the command I typed to do it. So, like I said, it's all open source. Everything's there. If you are so interested in helping me improve the Vista mapping tools, that is indeed open source. It will be in the repo as soon as I'm done presenting. So feel free to put in pull requests, that kind of thing. I am always looking for help. Again, that's the point of the open source community. We're all supposed to work together as a community. Come help.
We will.
Okay. If there's no more questions, I think I am between you and lunch.
Thanks, Chris.